Why is it so hard to trust our own gifts? Why can we see talent and beauty and potential in seemingly everyone else, but we struggle to believe it's also true about us when we stare at ourselves in the mirror? We downplay what we're good at, we second guess our strengths, we wait for permission or proof or a sign that we are good enough, and in the process, we bury the very gifts that we're meant to bring into the world. So what if your gifts were never the problem? What if the real issue is the story that you've been told or the story you've been telling yourself? And today, we're talking about why so many of us don't trust our own gifts and how to begin reclaiming the talent, creativity, and the calling that's been inside of you all along. Welcome to the Wisdom of Wow podcast. Welcome back to the Wisdom of Wow podcast. I am Harris the Third.
And I'm Kate.
This is Kate. We never even addressed the name thing.
I just realized that I don't think you've actually
We're a few episodes in. Should we?
Hi, I'm Kate.
Kate what?
Kate Harris. I know, it's about to get real weird real fast.
This confuses people all the time. I co-host another podcast with one of my friends, Chad Cannon, called The Story of Scale. It's all about scaling a business and the story of that, making sure that we're living a story we're scaling. So very much for business owners and entrepreneurs. But one of the questions he asked me right out of the gate is like, what is up with this weird name? I was like, dude, you know what's up with the weird name. He's like, but the people need to know. We got into childhood nicknames. Pudding may or may not have come up. I won't tell anything else about that story, but I don't even think that you were in the studio to hear that part.
No, it was not.
But Harris is my last name. It is also your last name. It is my last name. But Harris is what everyone calls me. So it's always weird when people, I've been friends for years sometimes with people and they're like,
what's your first name?
Hey, Harris. No, they're like, what's your last name?
Oh.
I just realized I've only known your first name, Harris. What's your last name? I was like, Harris is actually my last name. They're like, what? What's your first name?
We're going to devote an entire episode to this at a later date.
I am a third, so I'm the third man in my family with the exact same legal name. So I am Harris the Third, but it is awkward when we do stuff together because it's like Harris the Third and Kate Harris.
Yeah, and I usually just say I'm Kate, which is probably equally as weird to people. They're like, Kate.
What's interesting is if you're not aware of this and you're just stumbling across this show, Kate and I are both authors, best-selling authors, dare I say. And so as writers of books, I know there's going to come a day where we actually write a book together. People have asked us for that. And
Harris and Kate Harris.
Yeah, it's gonna be weird, but we'll address that at another time. We're talking about gifts, right? Talent, whatever you want to call it. People have different words for it. And goodness gracious, we've all got a lot of it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean it. You're like, Harris, you don't know me. I don't know everything about you, but there's one thing I know with absolute certainty, probably a few things I know with absolute certainty. And one of them is that you are talented beyond measure. Like, it is insane how gifted you are. It's just we don't see our gifts. We don't believe in our gifts. We don't exercise our gifts. And our gifts were given to us in design, I think, to be a gift to others. And so let's have a conversation about this. When I say the word gifts or the idea of being able to see our gifts and leveraging them or reclaiming them, what comes to mind for you? You've written about this before, I believe.
I have. So I have a book called The Poet's Rebellion. And I start off that entire book with a story about Odin. So for anyone who is curious, I have Viking heritage I'm literally 50% Swedish, 50% Norwegian. We've done the DNA stuff. It is literally 50-50.
I did the same DNA test.
You're a lot of things.
I'm a lot of things, including 0.5%. I think it's 6. I think it's over 0.5% Korean. So if you've been watching the podcast and you're just like, pretty sure that guy's got some Korean in him, congratulations.
You figured it out.
You have a gift.
You have a gift. We're off the rails. No, so I am literally 100% Scandinavian. So we have traced, my family has done this extensive research to trace all the way back into the 1400s. So it's really incredible. But there's a story in Old Norse mythology about Odin. Now, some people might be familiar with Odin because of
Mhm.
Marvel Universe, bless it. Um, but Odin, once upon a time, the people created something called the Odorir. And the Odorir literally meant the stirring of inspiration. It was the source of the human inspiration. It was everything that made their creativity kind of come alive. Well, Odin saw this and was more or less like, mine. I want that. I don't want anyone else to have it. And so I am going to go steal it. So Odin came to Earth as like he could transfigure. Read the story, it's great. But more or less, he came to Earth as an eagle, and
I thought you were going to say seagull because in Finding Nemo, the
they
seagulls
do
are like
say
mine,
mine.
mine.
I mean, maybe we should translate it to seagull, not eagle. But he comes to Earth and he scoops up the entire vat of inspiration and steals it from the humans. And then there is this loss. He doles it out to the people he deems most worthy of the creativity, of the inspiration, of the poetry. Um, and at some point, the premise of the book that I wrote was it's our time to steal it back. It exists. We all have access to it, and we haven't done anything with it. So the very first chapter of the book is the courage to be cracked open.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, as a writer, I remember sitting down and the first chapter really poured out quite easily for me because it was exactly what I needed. And I wrote in a way that I took all all of the shackles off. Okay, if I really was going to say what I needed to say, what was I going to say? And as I wrote about the courage to be cracked open, there are so many moments in my life where it's like the shackles went on or the gates closed, not maybe by my own doing, but many times by other people. You can't do that. You can't have that.
Sure.
Writers don't make money. Artists don't make money. Don't marry the magician, marry the doctor or the lawyer or the business owner.
I'm so sorry to all the doctors and lawyers out there. I feel like and it regularly comes up because that's who she was told to marry.
I'm
and
a
they're
child
just
of
like,
the 80s and 90s.
they're like, oh man, like if your gift is to be a doctor, if you're really gifted at legal practice,
we need them.
This episode is to inspire you to stick with that
Stay with it.
right? I know she's incredible, but she was designed to marry a magician. That doesn't mean you're on the wrong path.
Oh my
You're on the right
goodness.
path. Yeah.
No, the whole writing process, it like freed something from my mind and my soul.
Yeah.
Because even though I had been doing it for decades for other people, it was the first time I had sat down and done it for myself and wrote the stories I needed to write and said the things I needed to say and then invited people on the journey with me to go, okay, what does it look like? The idea of a poet's rebellion, what does that even mean? Well, if I am the poet and poetry is this spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, so I have all of these things that I need to get out into the world, and I have had that voice stolen from me.
Mm-hmm.
The rebellion is not anymore. I'm coming for it. So I have to be cracked open. I have to be willing to be forged by fire. I have to be, going through all of these pieces and then leaving a wake that's worth following. And so I think there's a fun little thing about being a woman as well that obviously you can't relate to, but growing up as a child of the 80s and 90s, it was women just do this. And I think that's starting to change, but I also found myself very dissatisfied with just continuing to march down the same road as everybody else. She's just a housewife. She's just a business person. She's just a mom. I mean, how many people out there I've heard you're just fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And so the creativity required to crack open that part of my soul, because I think our creativity comes from a deep well inside of us, meant that things were going to be a little hard, things were going to be a little scary. But ultimately, the number of people who have read that book or that I have talked to over the last however many months since I released that book has been, I just needed someone to tell me it was okay. I just needed someone to open the door for me to go back and reclaim what is rightfully mine.
Yeah. Obviously, if you guys haven't read Kate's book, The Poet's Rebellion, you should grab a copy of that. We'll link to it in the show notes and in the description of the video below if you're watching on YouTube. But I had a thought just now that I've never had before. And I don't know if I'm having one of those like epiphany moments and this is like super wise
Oh
and
boy.
clever, or if this is just like a new way of thinking for me and it's not a big deal. But I notice how often we take our gifts and we put them in boxes. And usually when we give a gift to someone, we put it in a box. And so
Mhm.
there's something interesting about that to me. And it's strange how difficult it is to allow yourself to take this thing that you've been given and put it on display without feeling like it's arrogant or prideful or that you're showing off, right? And yet gifts don't belong in a box. They're designed to be unwrapped and seen and like held up and be like, celebrate it. It's so cool. And I was thinking back for a moment. I also had this little flashback to our last conversation in the last episode about just feeling lonely and isolated and how so many times it's actually our gifting that can make us feel lonely and isolated because, we're joking around about doctors and lawyers and magicians, but everybody in our world wants to know what box to put you in. And I struggled with that for so many years. It's becoming less of a problem these days because like our body of work keeps growing and now people are like, oh my gosh, yes, he runs this company and he runs a publishing imprint and a podcast network and he does these huge gatherings that Apple and Google and Disney come to. And oh yeah, he also does magic tricks. And so it's like a lot of that came from this drive to like, please stop putting me in a box. Where it's like, oh, Harris, he's a magician. I remember we were living downtown Nashville. You remember the season of our lives.
Mhm.
And I just quickly realized that all of our quote unquote friends, and there's some real friends from that season, but so many of them that were inviting us to hang out on a regular basis. A few months in, I was like, wait a second. I don't even know these people and they don't even know me. I'm here because I know how to do magic tricks.
Mhm.
And what made me catch on to it is like, hey, Harris, what are you doing tonight? Would you be available to swing by this club or swing by this, restaurant
Dinner, yeah.
room or this dinner or whatever? And I was like, yeah, I'm in town. It's like, oh, okay, bring a deck of cards.
Yep.
The governor's going to be here. Or, make sure you got some magic in your pocket. We've got this like country star is going to be there. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm just the magician. I'm like a circus monkey who's been invited to the party to entertain your friends.
And what's hilarious is after they would text you, they would text me to make sure I brought a backup deck of cards in case you like were like, I'm not bringing cards. I'm not doing this. And so they would be like, hey, make sure that you also
Yeah.
put a deck of cards into your bag.
Yeah. Like, what is it that we want to take the totality of who someone is and put them in a box so that we know which shelf they should be categorized on? And so we either take gifts and we keep them in the box, or once they're out and on display, we try to put them back in a box to figure out where they belong. It's like these boxes and gifts thing. It's just, there's something to this.
Well, I mean, I would say that I feel like putting people in boxes makes us feel better about ourselves,
Yeah.
about what we have or have not accomplished. Because if we can look at somebody else's box and go, well, I did better than them. Okay, I feel good. Or I got to put them in a box because I haven't gotten there yet. So I need to contain
Yeah.
their energy, contain all of the pieces that make them who they are so that I can feel better about how I haven't met that mark or gotten that achievement.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, I think we compartmentalize things across the board, again, out of necessity because we can't handle the ambiguity of all of them being available all at once.
Yeah. I think there's a tactical side to this too, not to take this too much of a different direction, but one of the things that I feel like greatly contributed towards my comfort level with my gifting, which is something that I notice a lot of people struggle with, despite my annoyance of being put in boxes, is my parents were really good at affirming my gifts to make sure I didn't hide them. And so when they saw a gifting in me or they saw some sort of talent, it was very much fostered by way of immersion, right? And people have talked about that approach to parenting and working with kids. But like the moment I've tried to translate that into experiences for my kids, the moment my kids show a very sincere base level, like level of depth, interest in something, it's like, okay, let's kind of go all in and make that like a special interest for a while.
Which freaks people out.
Yeah.
It freaks our parents out because maybe not yours. It definitely freaks mine out because they look at me and they're like, I mean, all she did was say that she wanted to sew something. So why are we buying a sewing machine, going to the fabric store, doing all this stuff, and you've spent, a couple $100 to make this thing happen? What if she doesn't like it? Well, how will she know she doesn't like it
Yeah.
if she didn't get the opportunity?
Yeah.
Or Pokemon cards for Jude, or gymnastics for Milo. She's doing gymnastics 3 days a week right now because it's what she wants.
It doesn't always have to be expensive. It doesn't mean you have to go
No,
buy all the stuff.
no.
I remember when I got into drums as a kid, like my parents couldn't afford to take me down to the city, like an hour away, and
Yeah.
find a instrument store or guitar center or something like that to buy me like a $10,000 drum kit with all the cymbals and stuff. And so it was like immediately like check the classifieds in the newspaper. Remember
Yeah.
those? Or like hit up the local yard sales that weekend, like find some drums, borrow some from someone, take me to somewhere that already has them. It's like, how do we take a kid who's showing an interest in something and immerse them in that thing to see, hey, is there something else emerging here that we can foster?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I think the thing that I always come back to is that it will always feel bizarre
Yeah.
to everybody else around you.
Yeah.
Because, and I want to be really clear that we're not confusing this with sports culture, because we also have seen firsthand the absolute disaster that can be fostered inside of sports
Oh,
culture.
no doubt. No doubt. Yeah.
That tips it over the edge, right? Hey, we immersed you in something and we gave you every opportunity, and then you squandered it. And then the parents attach
Yes.
all of that disappointment to themselves.
Yeah. Or you're
So-
attaching your identity with theirs, or attempting to.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, thus far in this conversation, here's the tension. Most people don't lack talent.
Right.
All of these kids, including us, including you don't lack talent. You were given gifts. It's just somewhere along the way, we start lacking the permission to trust it. And therefore, we put it in a box because we're like, oh, I don't want people to see that. Or I don't want to. Sometimes it even happens because our gifting is so strong, the talent is so obvious, we're nervous about how it's going to make other people feel. And so therefore we hide and play small so that other people don't feel insecure around us. I think there's one of those like famous Marianne Williamson quotes. It's like, don't play small. Don't hide your light just so other people don't feel insecure around you. But I think that's connected to this too. But now we have these little buzz phrases like imposter syndrome. Everyone's struggling with imposter syndrome. I read a stat one time that says it affects like something like 70 to 75% of the American population.
Oh, I would have thought it was way higher.
Struggles with imposter
I would have
syndrome.
been like 150%, because
Yes.
there's people that aren't even here yet that are going to struggle with this.
Yes, I don't. Do you struggle with them? Let's do like an unofficial study. If you're watching on YouTube, do you struggle with imposter syndrome? And if so, in the comments below, literally like, "Hey, imposter syndrome here," and put a little hand raising emoji or something like that. But a lot of this has to do with the reality, and psychologists talk about this all the time. But we as human beings, because of our wiring to make sure that we don't get eaten by the lion or the tiger, we have this very natural negativity bias. And so we overvalue threat and we undervalue ability. And so rather than steward my talents and my gifting to contribute towards a very purpose-driven, meaningful life, we spend all of our creative energy making sure that we're protecting instead of thriving, surviving instead of thriving.
See, when you say that, it actually triggered a story for me when Everly played softball. So she's like 8 or 9 years old playing softball on a team. And the team, these are 8 and 9-year-olds. These are second and third graders. And there were some parents who were very afraid that their kid wouldn't whatever. And so they downplayed the abilities of other girls or pushed them to the side to make space for their own insecurities, their own projections. And I think there's something to learn about, when we talk about this kind of subject, how we show up. And we haven't mentioned this yet. How we show up, people are paying attention, specifically our kids. So for those of you who actually have children, they are watching how you manage your how big you play, your criticism, your comparison, your perfectionism, and then they skin it as their own. And we have to be so careful
Mhm.
because we crush their creativity, we crush their wonder and their belief that anything is possible
Yeah.
because they absorb our insecurities.
Yep. 100%. And it's all tied to things like criticism,
Yeah.
comparison, perfectionism. And then we take all those beliefs from our childhood into adulthood. And then we jump on social media, we start trying to share content. And then that just amplifies the comparison, whether we're posting or not ourselves, just the consumption of content online. We start comparing ourselves, our behind the scenes to other people's highlight reels, as is
Mm.
commonly said. And that shrinks our own perceived competence. And we start thinking, well, like, man, there for a moment, I kind of thought I was good at this, but then now that I'm looking at this person, it's like, nah. This is one of the bad things, I think, to things like American Idol. I know what your favorite performance show is, like American Idol, The Voice,
America's Got
America's Got
Talent.
Talent. Yeah. Like you do these things in your local community and you're just like, man, everyone says I'm really good at this. Maybe I should, like, this should be a thing. But we've lost. I see this entertainment a lot. Entertainment used to be very much about local markets. So it's like you have this musician that's playing at the local restaurant or bar or whatever, and everyone thinks they're amazing. And then that person is listening to like the A-list artist that's coming out of Nashville, getting these like multi-million dollar record deals. I see this in even like religious circles,
Mm.
especially in like the Christian faith. You have all these church leaders and pastors that are in their little small community. And yet every single weekend, if they choose to, both they and their people are exposed to these multi-million dollar productions on the weekends with like world-class communicators. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be communicating with the people
Yeah.
in your local community, but you're comparing yourself to this person who lives in New York City or Nashville or Tulsa or LA or whatever. And so then you downplay your own gifts to avoid disappointment, all because you were comparing them to someone else. And so it's just a really dangerous game. There's a reason why it's most often credited to Eleanor Roosevelt. I don't know who actually said it because it is credited to multiple people, but just that comparison is the thief of joy.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got to stop. You have to stop robbing your life of joy just through this comparison to other people. I get it. Your talent feels dangerous, but the reason that your talent and your gifting feels dangerous and the reason why you feel tempted to downplay your gifts is because, well, gosh, if I let it out, I might not be perfect. If I let it out, I might end up being disappointed. But your gifts were given to you to steward, and they are a gift back to the world and to others. What is, if you had to pick one thing that you know deep down you're gifted and talented at,
Mm.
but that you feel the pressure from society to hide, and that talent, dare I say, feels a little bit dangerous to you, what is the talent or gift that comes to mind?
Oh goodness, I don't know.
I bet if I asked you this question a couple years ago, you could have said writing.
Yeah, that's where my brain went, was writing is the thing that feels dangerous, but it doesn't to me anymore
Yeah.
because I have exercised that demon. So we are out. It's out of the way. Some I don't know if it's a gift, but I don't show up fully as myself. Because again, I think I can be misunderstood or misperceived as my intentions can be misperceived. Because I show up big in a room and I will fight for people, I will defend people, I will try to pull
Sure.
all of the things out of other people because I can see what they're actually capable of, or I know what's possible when we release ourselves
Yep.
from those chains. And I try to help kind of pull that out, but that is terrifying for people.
Yeah.
So I will either get, oh my gosh, this was amazing, or I'll get, are you kidding me? Get out of my face. Like there's not a whole lot in between. Because we don't like feeling uncomfortable when we're challenged. That can feel like, oh yeah, but I don't want to do that. I'm afraid of actually being good at this. I'm afraid of actually succeeding at that, which I think some people don't talk about very often. We talk about it with our clients a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Is some of you are probably not self-sabotaging because you don't think you're good at this, you're self-sabotaging because you might be afraid that you're going to be really great at it. And then
Mhm.
there's going to be an extra layer of requirement for you to show up differently, and that is terrifying.
Yep, for sure. I mean, when I think about why we downplay gifts to avoid disappointment, I think, yes, as I said earlier, it's because sometimes, like all of us, it's almost as if our talent feels dangerous because there's a vulnerability there. And then the other side of that is the cultural narrative of don't brag. And we call them
Yes.
talent shows. I was in so many talent shows when I was a kid. And there's this like, hey, be humble, don't show
Or
off.
humble brag. When it was
Don't
the
show off.
hashtag humble brag.
Yeah, I promise I'm not trying to pick on your mom. But I remember one time we were driving down the road. Jude was in the car with me, and this car like sped out and made that long, like revved his engine and peeled
Yeah.
his tires. And Jude goes, "Huh, show off." And I was just like, "Where'd you get that?" It's like, Nana always says that. And so I'm like, but that's the first thing I thought of when I thought of the phrase show off. But that's the idea that's in our culture is like, don't show off. And yet we have these literal things called talent shows.
Yes.
So the world is saying, be humble, play it safe, don't show off.
Well, and this happened to Milo. So Milo
Mhm.
joining a gymnastics club,
Mhm.
and she was in their level 1 class. She excelled out of it very quickly. And I got called by the coach, and the coach was like, "Hey, she really needs to be in level 2.
Yeah.
And this is the date and time." And I was like, man, she's already in a class somewhere else.
Mhm.
Could she go to the next level? Well, she could, but because of the age of the girls in level 3, and because she's only 6, she would actually make them feel bad. So we can't even let her in that class. I was just like, are we? What? Like, this is a
Everyone gets a participation trophy.
yes, and they were. And I'm not like slapping at them, but there was this moment as
Yes,
a
you are.
okay, I'm slapping at them. So there was this moment as a parent where I was like, I don't understand that. She is clearly capable. And this isn't me trying to like be that sports mom who's like, no, my kid is so fantastic. It was actually brought to me by the coach. Hey, she really should be in level 3, but we can't even get there because she'll make those kids feel bad. And I mean, we're no longer in that program. We moved her somewhere else. But like, why is that the mentality? Why is that the thing we default to? Or we don't, instead of maybe putting a 6-year-old in a class full of 10, 11, and 12-year-olds
Yep.
and them going, oh my gosh, if a 6-year-old can do this, what are we waiting for?
Yep. And so
What's
then,
capable within us?
yes. And then so then what do? We grow up with those stories and we
Yes.
spend the rest of our lives mistrusting our own brilliance.
Yes.
And then we hide our gifts when instead they were meant to be on display. All right. If we were to try to begin the process of bringing this conversation towards an end, how do we apply what we call the wisdom of wow to this? Well, it starts by asking some questions. We're wondering, right? Remember, wonder allows us to see ourselves more clearly with hopefully a little bit less distortion. Remember, curiosity is wonder in action. So sometimes it's just as simple as pausing and getting curious about the conversation. And you're immersed in that conversation right now. What are your gifts? What are your talents? Do you know what they are? The chances are pretty good that a lot of people listening in, you might be listening to this thinking like, yeah, I don't have any. And that's not true. Let's just acknowledge the reality that that's not true for a second, or at least test the theory and ask, was there once something that you got a little glimpse of that maybe made you feel like, maybe I could be good at this, even if you weren't great at it yet? And that allows wisdom to sort of kick into gear because it reframes talent, I think. It helps you recognize that talent isn't a performance, that sometimes it's not about the showing off. It's that it's an expression that's pouring out of the deepest sense of who you are. Gifts are not earned. They're just entrusted. They are given to us. And so if we go to the truth that's connected to that wisdom, that means you can't reclaim a gift that you've never learned to see. Look, self-doubt is often, it's just a story problem. We often say at a story that every problem is a story problem.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that every solution to every problem will be complete by just telling a new story, but every problem starts as a story problem and every solution starts with a new story. So what we're talking about is a story problem, not a skill problem. That's great news because if something is a story problem and not a skill problem, that means that you don't need anything else to solve the problem of not having any talents and gifts because it's just a new story. Congratulations, you're a storyteller. You're a human being. You're a story creature. And so you have the ability to change the story. Every talent, it just starts as a spark, not perfection, not even high performance, not greatness. Greatness is inside of us all, but that greatness comes on the heels of often hard work, development of a talent, but it starts with a spark. And sparks, literally, not just metaphorically, sparks need oxygen, but we shut it down. We howl the wow to death. So this is your invitation to let the wonder breathe a little bit. Give your spark some oxygen. Lean into the curiosity. Go through a process that might feel more like experimentation. And then turn down the volume of all the lies. Plug yourself into some encouragement. Go find a community of people who are going to encourage you. Plug yourself into a group of people who are not intimidated by the greatness that is in you or pressure you to play small when they get a little glimpse of your brilliance. And if you are experiencing that, look, what's the old saying? You can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family, something like that. I think there's a joke in there somewhere about picking your nose.
I was like, wait, I don't think I know this one because I only know you can pick your friends and you can pick your nose, but you can't pick your friend's nose.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to say on the heels of a conversation around loneliness in the last episode, run away, but your story is not going to blossom. You are not going to live a wow level life if your brilliance is intimidating to the people around you and you're plugged into a community of friends that are trying to get you to downplay your gifts. Your gifts have to have room to breathe. And also, I hope this goes without saying, but this doesn't mean that your gift has to be extraordinary. You're not,
I was just gonna say.
No one has to make a documentary about your life for you to live a meaningful story.
No,
not
at all. I can think of so many different pieces throughout history. I think to bookend this with Nordic culture, the Vikings understood something very unique that I think we've lost. It's an art that we have lost over time, and that is whenever they would hold the community gatherings. And there was a specialized word for them I can't think of off the top of my head right now, but everyone came into those rooms as they were, and they invited men, older, men, women, children, the elder. Everybody came in, and everyone from the ship's captains to the farmers to the weavers. And they understood something super unique, and that was that every person held value regardless of their status and regardless of their job. And that they knew that when the farmers and the weavers and the butchers, all of these people were in the same room, they all brought a unique perspective to the table. And when we hide the things that we're great at, when we hide or downplay the things that we know are innately who we are not helping everybody else. We're actually holding the collective back. So if you want to get really zoomed out, this isn't even just about us. This is about everybody. And we have to show up as our full, authentic, true selves in whatever that capacity looks like as the best we possibly can, or something else breaks along the way.
Yes.
And over time, we're not all trying to be the chief. We're not all trying to be the top C-suite title. Maybe you are, but not everybody needs to do that. We still need the people at every single level to make things work because it's all collective.
Yeah. So well said. Okay, a couple thoughts. One, I would say the mere act of trusting your gift is an act of wonder. If you are struggling to figure out what your gifts or your talents are, this is going to sound cliche in this context because we say it all the time, but start with wow. Actually start with wow. And by start with wow, I mean, go back to the wow moments throughout your life. Anytime someone else is in communication or connection with you and they're like, wow, when you hear people respond to wow, when you do something that makes you go, wow, pay attention to that because wow is often the birthplace of why. Now, the second thing is connected to that. There's a lot of find your why talk going around right now. And I don't know that starting with why is as helpful as starting with wow. But wow, moments of wow are inciting incidents in our story, and they're the birthplace of purpose. Our friend Jade Simmons says it this way, that purpose
Jesus.
is not what you do, it's what happens in the world around you when you do what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to say that again. Think about this. This matters a lot. This matters a lot in the context of this conversation. Purpose is not what you do. Purpose is what happens in the world around you when you do what you do, which means your gifting may not be your vocation. My gift, one might say, was being a magician. I'm not saying that I didn't have a gift and that I wasn't talented at the performing of the art of magic. But my true gifting was more in alignment with my purpose, which was not to do magic tricks. At least I hope that's not my life's purpose, not because I was against it, but because I'm doing not very much magic these days and a lot of other things in addition to that, which means if magician is my life's purpose and that's the entirety of my gifting, then somehow I'm missing my calling in this chapter of my life, right? And so you might be looking at this question around gifts and talent as an actual vocation, like gymnastics for our youngest daughter or magic tricks for me when I was a kid. But my actual purpose is to help solve story problems. My actual purpose is to help anyone who is leading in any way to solve big, meaningful problems in the world and to thrive in the imagination age by understanding the new currency of wisdom. My purpose is to help you get back to that sense of childlike wonder that gives you permission to believe, since believing is seeing way more than seeing is believing. When I say things like that, it's more about the impact and less about the thing that I do. But awakening wonder is the gift, not the ability to perform a magic trick. And so it's a little bit messy, and I would just encourage you to not think about it strictly in terms of a talent that you might see performed on a stage, but that your gift might be more of an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
As Jade says, the thing that happens in the world around you when you exercise your gift. But remember, your talent, your gifts, it was never the problem. The story around it was. And so I would encourage you to do some journaling, do some exploration, see what stories are connected to these gifts, and then restore your ability to leverage some of those gifts so that you can start to leverage them with confidence. All right, this is a big one. I hope today's conversation helps you, wherever you are listening in the world, step back into what has already been inside of you. And it's been really cool to hear from so many of you. We're just a few episodes in, but we've got a little thing behind the scenes that shows us like where in the world people are listening. And it's crazy to me that we have these conversations and they make their way to so many different places
it's
around
incredible.
the world. So anything that you want to add before we wrap up this episode?
No, just glad that you're here. Keep listening.
Keep listening, keep watching.
Yeah.
Let's keep wondering together.
Yes.
That's the purpose of this whole thing. But not just to wonder for wonder's sake. As cool as wonder's amazing. It decreases chronic inflammation in your body even. Wonder isn't woo-woo. There's some crazy cool science with wonder.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to move beyond the choice of wondering into the wisdom that wonder can gift us. More specifically, the wisdom of wow. So thanks for joining us in this episode. Thanks, as always, for your feedback, your ratings, your subscriptions, your reviews. They mean the world to us. Keep them coming. Let us know how we can continue to make this podcast something that is a gift to you and your life and your leadership and your family and your work. We're so glad that you're here. We'll see you next time right here on the Wisdom of Wow podcast.